Welcome to True and Unpolished. Through this podcast, our intention is to uplift, amuse, and inspire you to create more of a life you'll love. Let's get authentic, everybody. I'm going to read you a little story. It's Deepak Chopra, and it's from his book. He tells the story in the book, How to Know God. Some months ago, I was in my office looking over a project that needed some cover art, but I knew no professional illustrators. As soon as I had the thought, I wonder whom I can find, the phone rang. It was my grown daughter, Malika, calling from India. And when I mentioned my problem, she immediately suggested an Irish artist named Suzanne Malcolm. Neither of us had any idea where she lived. I hung up and thought nothing more about it until that afternoon when a publisher friend called from London. On the off chance, I asked if he knew Suzanne Malcolm, but he didn't. An hour later, he found himself at a cocktail party when the person next to him got a call. The person put the phone to his ear and said, "Suzanne?" My publisher friend gave in to a sudden impulse. "Could that possibly be Suzanne Malcolm you're talking to?" he asked. Astonishingly, it was. My friend took down her telephone number and also asked her to call me. By this time, we are still on the same day. I had flown to Los Angeles for a scheduled lecture. I was early, however, so I pulled my rental car over to the curb. I had no idea exactly where I was. Checking my messages on the phone, I found one from Suzanne Malcolm. This was good news, and I dialed the number she had left me. "Hello," a woman's voice answered. "Suzanne," I said, introducing myself. "I was wondering whether you could fly over from Dublin. I think I have an art assignment for you." "Well, actually, I'm not in Ireland at the moment. I'm in Los Angeles." "Really? Where are you staying?" I asked. "I'm not sure," she replied. "Oh, yes, it's 3312 Dominic." I looked outside the car window and felt a shudder pass through me. I was parked directly in front of her house. Now that is some synchronicity. And now take a listen to Carrie Graves, Mary, and I talk about our experience of synchronicity.
In the psychology of Carl Jung, synchronicity is a meaningful coincidence.
Yes.
And take of that what you will, because coincidence, sometimes that word, we dismiss it as not anything, but meaningful coincidence is how synchronicity is defined. And maybe, Mary, you would add something to that. I don't know.
Well, I would say that my understanding is that, and also it generally is a coincidence, a meaningful coincidence that occurs from your inner world. So your thoughts, dreams, and inner experiences that is reflected in your outer world. So signs, animal sightings, oracles, relationships, anything can have a synchronistic message in it.
So, Mary, you have a true story, and it has to do with synchronicities and coincidences. Is that right?
Right. And I don't know that this is like the best story of synchronicity, but it's such a good story. I thought I'd fit it in here. The synchronicity for me was that I was reading Eckhart Tolle's books, A New Earth and The Power of Now. I mean, that was when my daughter was like 2. I mean, she was little. And we had gone to shopping at a department store that was in a strip mall. We're kind of standing in the front-ish area, but all of a sudden the building started vibrating. And I was like, I've never experienced an earthquake before, but I was like, oh my gosh, this must be an earthquake. And it was this intense vibration. And all of a sudden, this explosive sound happens. And through the concrete wall, a car comes busting through the concrete wall and drives right past us in the store.
You're saying in the store, right? Like
right.
The car drove in the store.
It drove into the store. And then it just went to the end, to the back of the store and stopped. And
the whole length of the store?
Yes, it was such. What?
I'm just wondering how I missed this, but go. Okay, so
I've never told you this story before.
No, well, maybe you have. I don't remember anything anymore. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay, so go ahead.
So yeah, it was okay. So the reason I brought up The Power of Now and A New Earth books is those books are really about living in the moment, like the power of living right in this moment. And it was the first time in my life that something potentially traumatic, that could have been very traumatic for me personally. And it was for the people in that store. There was a lot of hysteria. Nobody was injured.
Thank goodness.
And I'm not really sure what happened with the driver, why that happened. But in that moment, I was completely present for the first time in my life in a pretty traumatic kind of experience. It was like those books were coming to life.
So are you saying that what you thought was an earthquake preceded the car coming in, or it was
right? I didn't know what was happening, but
okay.
So the building started vibrating, and to me, that's what I would have imagined an earthquake being like.
Sure, got it.
So there was a concrete, cinder block wall, and so you couldn't see what was happening on the outside of the wall. You just feel this vibration, and what was happening is the car was pushing against the wall. It's like the driver fell asleep with a foot on the gas or something.
Right.
So that's the reason for the vibration. And then it just, the car came busting through the wall.
What I love about moments like that is it jars you into presence. Like, even if you're pretty well unconscious most of the time, like yesterday, my husband and I had an outing, and we went and like, I did this double take because there was a like lighted tree, Christmas ornaments. And I look, and the tree is upside down. Like the tree was upside down. And it took me a minute to like understand what I was looking at. And I stopped, I'm looking, and I'm like, that tree's upside down. And then I look up, and I'm looking at the guy who sits at the front desk, who clearly has watched people.
He's done this on purpose.
Yeah. It's like, and has watched people have this moment before, because I look at him and he just smiles and shakes his head and looks down like, oh yeah. And I thought about it after. I'm like, gosh, I wish there was more like that, that just like will just snap, wake you up. Mine clearly was a little more subtle than a car driving through the wall.
Well, it was very bizarre because I have always been terrified of life, things like that happening. And it didn't at all. It was more like this magical, mystical moment where, I was witness to the experience, and it was a gift of presence, being in the moment.
Yeah.
When everybody around me was hysterical.
Yeah.
And I just kind of walked outside, I kind of read the room, and then, people were kind of running around, freaking out. And I just was like, wow. And I left. That was it. That was the end of the
waters. I
love
it.
Just happened.
Experience.
Mary, you just gave me an aha. I think when we're living in the present, and it's so cool that we're approaching this from this direction and not attached to outcomes, that we're more open for synchronicity.
Oh yeah.
So that's
yes.
My segue. I have a story. I have so many. I keep saying I'm going to write them all down one day, of my journey through my professional life to where I am now in Baltimore. But a quick story is I Oh my gosh, there's a couple synchronicities in this. So before I was in Baltimore, I worked for the Diocese of Upper South Carolina. And before that, I ran the bookstore at Trinity Cathedral in Columbia. And I was in discernment for kind of what I was going to do next and with my life. And I was dreaming about Paris all the time. I
Mm.
was like, what is this? What's going on? I mean, to me, Paris is freedom, it's like big goals, it's amazing place, um, unreachable almost,
Mm.
unattainable, but something to aspire to.
Mhm.
And I've been there before. So one day I was working at the cathedral and somebody came in who was a French exchange student. I was like, oh my God, okay, that was a synchronicity because not only was I having these dreams, but here comes one walking in waking life. Long story short, I decided to Google the American Cathedral in Paris and see if they had any jobs. And they
Nice.
were hiring a communications, community relations person.
Oh.
So
Which is
while
what
I was
Carrie
working at the
does.
bookstore, yeah, which is what I do, I taught myself how to build websites, how to do social media. This was like, 2000, I don't know, 2010 or something when I wasn't really skilled at all of that. So I built myself essentially a communications resume, which was not my current field, and applied for the job. And I never heard anything. That's fine. It was not attached to outcomes. But this is what came of it. I can't include all the details because we'd be here for an hour and a half. But ultimately, I got a job in communications working for the Diocese of Upper South Carolina. And when that opportunity opened up, I had a communications resume for myself ready to roll. And another synchronicity in that process was we were doing some remodeling at the cathedral and I didn't have an office. And one day I was messaging a musician friend of mine. I was like, we should have lunch sometime. And we were going to do it a certain day. And then the day changed. And he and I never go to lunch ever. So this was like a first. And then I was like, you pick where we're going to go. And he picked Drip on Main Street in downtown Columbia. I'd never been there. And we walked up, and I saw my boss, the dean of the cathedral, and I froze. I had told him that I was discerning this job for the diocese. And he said, well, that's great. He was supportive, but we didn't really have a chance to talk about it. And
Mhm.
when I saw him there, I was like, oh, this is synchronicity.
Yeah.
So after my friend and I ate,
They're not
I could
always
tell
as
he
magical as we
is
want
magical,
them to
and I could
be.
I could see it happening in the moment. It wasn't in retrospect. After my friend and I ate lunch, my friend left, and I could tell that my boss was waiting for me, that he wanted to talk. And we had
Mhm.
the best talk. I had a chance to really connect with him about my past communications experience and really why I was doing this. And it just felt really important in the time at the time. And there were so many
Yeah.
moments like that on my journey. So
Yeah. That's the thing about synchronicities. You mentioned, well, I can't go into all of it or we'll be here all day. The thing about synchronistic stories is there's so many details that actually make up one big synchronicity. That's my experience of them anyway.
yeah.
And I also think that you kind of pointed to this, Carrie, and Mary, you said magical, like this mystical, magical experience. I feel like
Hmm.
there is a quality to synchronicities, like or a quality to the moment, like almost being in the seat of the watcher is my experience. Like when it's happening, I I'm thinking of one in particular, and it was right before I had no idea that I was moving out of state. I had not even met my husband, who eventually would be the cause of my going out of state. But I had no, designs on that, but I kept seeing billboards. And of course, the billboard was there, but something about it like clicked, it like triggered. And no, triggered
Yeah.
is the wrong word, but like it went, look. And I thought, like I'd see a billboard with like a plane that's like, you're going places, it's something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that, and then
Yeah.
I remember Mary and it was actually she and I were in the car and we were driving, and I looked up and really just knew that I was supposed to look at the road signs. And this is a place that I grew up in. And so I'm looking at the green street signs, and it's like, it said Florida Street, Delaware. It was all like names of states. And we were
Yeah.
passing them, and I was like, and I could feel that I was going to be going through states. I was going to be going by states. And eventually my
Wow.
husband and I, not long after that, would meet and then drive cross country together from
I
South
love that.
Carolina to California.
So yeah, when I later was moving to Maryland, I had this amazing aha moment. Well, before I was moving, I saw the job and I just knew I was supposed to apply for it.
Yes.
Whether I got it or not, wasn't worried about the outcome. I just knew.
Yeah.
And went through the process, and things really seemed like they were rolling. It felt magical. And my husband and I had lived in our house for 17 years, and there was a neighbor's mailbox. So I didn't know their name.
Mm.
And I looked up one day, and the mailbox said the last name of my now boss
Oh.
in Great North, which is the street they lived on. And I was like, oh. And then one day we were driving to Charlotte to visit family, and I just looked up and it said like Sutton Avenue, which is my bishop's name. And I was like, I mean, just things
Yeah.
kept happening. And I was like, I've driven to Charlotte a million times and probably seen that sign.
Like something you had done before, but there was this kind of surrealness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that quality.
That is one of my favorite things about both of y'all, is because you're open to it. And but this is what I wanted to say before, like that experience I had at the store with the car going through. There was a similar experience. I was out running and this deer literally crossed my path. It was like a buck with, big antlers. And when I say literally crossed my path, it ran right straight in front of me. And I could feel the antlers brush my face.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't, obviously it didn't hit me, but it was, I was running, he was running, and it was just right there.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I've had these big moments like this, like the car and the deer. So, but then I also have these quiet periods. I don't know if that is true for y'all or not, but I wonder, because I think when it first happens, life is like, here, you start to awaken, and life is like, here's some big signs, here's some literal street signs, here's some literal billboards, like getting our attention. And I think that's what nightmares do too. It's like, hello, I'm trying to get your attention.
Yep.
But then a lot of times it's more of the subtle stuff.
Yeah, they're subtle. And then too, one of the things I was going to say about that is that I will use not having a bunch of synchronicities as like proof that I'm clearly not spiritual enough. Like when I go through those periods, my first thought is, oh my gosh, what are you doing wrong? Why are you not being done by life? Like what is happening, And so it's nice to hear you say, Mary,
there's something wrong with you, Lydia.
All right, good. We've confirmed it. There's definitely.
Yeah. I love what's happened in this conversation about being open and not being attached to outcomes, which is part of being open, because yes, whenever I try to live by expectations or overthink something, it doesn't work and I don't get what I need. Yeah. And so I've learned that over time. Now I'm human, so I fall back into those periods where, whatever, I'm extra stressed and just not, not in that place of alignment. So I try to really notice that and grab the reins and try to get, even if it takes a couple of weeks or 5 minutes, just try to get back in alignment so that I can be open, even to the smallest synchronicities, which can be as simple as like I really needed a cup of coffee today, and my best friend at work texted me and was at Starbucks, just
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I really needed that right now. And it just worked out, you know?
Yes.
To me, that's like what they say about living with gratitude. It's the same kind of concept. I mean,
Yeah.
you can just be like, well, that's a coincidence. I mean, things like that happen, big deal, and brush it off.
Hmm.
But then you lose the magic.
Hmm. And
Good
it's not
point.
true. I mean,
Right.
so the coincidence thing reminds me of the Albert Einstein quote. It says there are two ways to look at the world, as if nothing is a miracle or as if everything is.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
right,
What would you rather?
that's
What
right.
kind of life would you rather live? A
yeah.
Right.
cynical,
And
nothing's a miracle.
Hmm. Hmm.
right. And when we lose the magic, we also lose out, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't pay attention
Yes.
to those things. Now, I may have missed other opportunities too, but
Yeah,
um,
that's true.
but
So,
I don't know, but I believe there are many paths to an end, and I don't really worry about that. But if I just didn't pay attention to any of it, oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
As you were talking, Carrie, I had this aha moment, and that was that, right? And we talk about this all the time, and everything's a metaphor. So, you were saying, well, when I overthink something, or I try to make it happen, it just doesn't work out. It just doesn't work out. And because you were saying that, and I wasn't identified with it because I do it all the time, but usually I'm identified with it. But because I could hear you say that, I went, oh, the metaphor is it's good that it didn't work because life was telling us you're not doing this. Like if you want the good
Yeah,
stuff, stop doing it. you know,
that's right.
be done by life.
Yes,
And
it is.
yeah, yes. And that is
Yeah, if
how
we can learn to see that, and that is a way of living life unpolished, I think. If you think
it
about it,
is.
when you're trying to control it,
Yeah.
that's like polishing the stone. But when you're open to just the raw, beauty of what's going to come along, then the gifts come,
Yes, yes. And I think that
the way I see it.
synchronicities can mean lots of different things. This is what I wanted to ask you guys
Mhm.
about. Because we think, well, what's the meaning of the synchronicity? And I think that they have individual meanings. There can be themes to
Mhm.
what they mean, but that each one has a very specific reason for showing up. So, and yes, if you go out to the broad view, it shows the interconnectedness of life and that we're
Mhm.
connected and that there's more here than meets the eye. But the synchronicity itself is a message. And sometimes the message
Yeah.
is just look for the magic. But what do you guys think? What do you think synchronicities mean? Like when you're seeing them, what does that mean?
I think exactly what you said. I think that it's just it's a reassurance, it's an
Mm,
affirmation. It does teach you to live in gratitude, like Mary said, especially when you acknowledge it. And it's guidance.
yeah.
It's guidance that's there.
well, I think I look at them, and I would guess that Carrie's the same, but I look at them the same way that we look at dreams. There's multiple layers. And
Mm,
so I
Yeah.
think this would be a yes. And
mm,
yes, it can be very specific, like literally pointing out a sign, but also it can be the same as dreams. Like as soon as you uncover one layer, then there's something deeper underneath that.
Yeah.
oh, that's
Thanks,
a great
Mary.
way to say it. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and really, it's like in dream work, it's all part of the same thing. It's all coming from, however you want to personally define it, from the creator, from the unconscious.
Yes, right.
But it's
That,
different ways of manifesting, and has many layers.
to me, the one of the biggest things it says to me is you're on the right track. Like everything's working
Yes.
out. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
best
so
feeling.
hawks are something that show up for me all the time, and it started in 2014 when I was going through a very painful divorce, and it is amazing how frequently I see them of course, any bird of prey I would label as a hawk because that's the best I can do. But but the message is, for me, a hawk symbolizes their messenger of spirit. And every time I see one, it's a reminder to stop and notice the thought that I just had, notice what is coming next. And I think we attach like specific meaning to those signs in our own life.
Yes. Yeah.
But then also, if we hold on to that one meaning, then we might miss what else is there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
that's good. So, Mary, bunnies are like that for me, like rabbits in the field. They're pure magic. But I've had these moments, and one of them was when I was taking my job with the Diocese of Upper South Carolina, where I saw 3 rabbits, and I just knew it was like, this is big change coming. And same thing for Maryland, rabbits. And I like what you're saying, to being open to the other meanings of when I see them when I'm going on a run, and there's not some big thing on my mind, but I try to at least catch the energy when I'm going by. Like, I need rabbit medicine right now, so for whatever it's worth, at least honor it real quick.
I agree. And I'll tell you that I have an animal story, and it doesn't have any specific meaning attached to it even now. It's just what I know to be a very profound, important moment. And it's an animal. And it was when we were driving across country, and there were so many synchronicities with us driving across country. Like, it was just, and honestly, now that I say that, I think sometimes the reason why we experience more is because we need more encouragement. Like, if I ever needed a time in my life to be reassured that I was on the right path, it was then. And boy, did the universe show up and like give me all these signs. And that just came to me as I was talking about it. And I like that. I'm so glad that came to me, because now when I start to beat me up for not having synchronicities, I can be like, it's because you don't need any. You're doing so well.
Yeah.
Don't beat you up. No.
That's right. So what happened is we had stopped at this park. It's like an amphitheater. I don't know. It was like Tennessee. We had no idea where we were. And this is before like smartphones were like all over the place. And so one of the things that I had been doing is I'd been inspired. I'd done all these paintings, and I had them in the trunk, and I kept being inspired to like leave them at different places. And so I left one. And it was the angelfish one, Mary. I don't know if I ever told you this. Because it was an amphitheater where people would go like for something like a retreat or a workshop. And I was putting it there to say, this is, yes, this is going to happen. I'm going to leave it right now, but it's going to happen. And then I walked out, and there's this creek, and I'm walking up and down the creek. And then I sat down, and I am not kidding. A squirrel literally walked up to me and then looked at me, sat down, and was staring at me. And I was like, this squirrel is just staring at me. Like, he's not looking, he's literally looking into my eyes. And for me, it felt like it was 5 minutes. It probably was 10 seconds. I don't know. But I knew that it was big. Like, I'm like, holy cow. Like, I'm St. Francis of Assisi now. I don't know what happened.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember what squirrel. I have one card, what squirrel means. It's like believe in yourself, the cards that I have.
Well, there's a gathering, and a gathering that squirrels do.
Oh, cool.
They gather and they store for the future.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Which would be kind of in line with where you were in that. But I actually have pulled it up right here.
Oh, cool.
You have accumulated wisdom and experience, and are surrounded by all you need.
That's
an abundance of resources are available to you.
And it's synchronistic that I was inspired to tell you for the first time, Mayor, that it was an angelfish, because we're collaborating again, a little older. little wiser.
Oh, I love
Right.
that.
As we're closing out, and then maybe we can each share about creating more. I also, when I met, there were so many around the meeting of my husband, and he would be fine with me saying this. And I've only now recently believed them to be good omens. No, I'm teasing. At the time I did, I was very excited. And then I'm like, why did the signs let me down? Not because he did, but because, life in general and marriage and what that is. And now we're living this magical kind of existence, but there's lots of work to get there. And so I was down like by the water, and I was thinking about him and wondering about him. Like, is he the one? But I always thought somebody was the one. And so I kind of didn't trust myself. And I'm like, yeah, you thought like 10 million people were the one. So it's probably not the one. And I'm walking and I get to the edge of the river and down, and I look down, and there is a shirt with the back, on the back, it said single. And then his last name is Singleton, mine is now too, but it said single. And then I was like, oh, maybe that's a sign. And then I said, no, it's not a sign. You always think everybody's the one. And then I walked a little bit further, and it said, I saw a water bottle that said number 1.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I
Yeah.
just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yes,
That's
thanks for
amazing.
listening. And I just want to say my husband is wonderful and lovely.
How is everybody creating more?
For me, it's just constantly working on awareness. And also, when something happens, like I see an animal or something like that, I go and look it up. I might draw it. I might, paint it, just something to deepen that experience of the magic of an encounter. And I don't do that with everything, like encounters with people, but that practice of awareness and honoring the image or the symbol when you can, I think helps
Yeah.
create more in life.
Mary, I think this is, kind of what we were talking about last week, with trusting our intuition. And,
Yeah.
the more you trust your intuition, the more intuition you get. And the more
Right.
you notice the signs, the more you get, like Mary was talking about in the beginning. And I think, Mary, too, you pointed to the gratitude piece of it. So just noticing when it happens and pausing for a moment to feel the gratitude that life is talking to you, and that
Right.
you are interconnected with all of this, that is going to draw more to you.
Okay, I try to ask the animals if they have anything to tell me. Like I'll stop, and if a bunny's looking at me from, the bunny side eye, I try
Yeah.
to, stand back enough to not scare it off.
Yeah.
That's look it in the eye and tell it I love it and ask it if it has anything to tell me. And sometimes they sit there like your squirrel, Lydia, for some time.
I love
And
that so much, because I will be like, oh, cute bunny. Okay, bye. And like run in to get like look it up and Google the symbolism for bunny, and completely miss the moment with the bunny. I love that.
yeah,
It's that reminder to like pause and say, what are you trying to tell me? And I do that with
yeah,
other
commune.
things, but when it comes to symbology or things like that, I'm so like trained to go and Google the metaphor. So I love that advice. So everybody, talk to the
Thanks.
bunnies, talk to the hawks that may or may not be hawks. talk, talk to the squirrels. I love it.
Draw, write, create,
Yes.
Yeah.
pause, listen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mary, you have really taught that to me so well. Like, and Carrie just pointed to it, but it's the deepening the experiencing by, using your creativity around it, drawing it, really taking time to seep in it when you're able to. I think that's another way to create more. And Mary's really, really shown me kind of how to do that.
Mary has taught me the same. She's quite the teacher and guide.
Well, thank y'all.
Well, this has been fun. Do we know what we're talking about next time?
I don't think we do yet.
We don't know.
No.
We will follow the signs. Well, thank you for being here, Carrie, once again. And thank you all for listening. We are so grateful for you. You have been listening to True and Unpolished, the podcast. Let's see what happens next.